Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope you're good. We can start now.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And today promises to be another interesting day. It's one of the days a lot of people have been waiting for because we're coming to discuss a very pertinent issue. We are about discussing an issue that has been bothering people. Personally, I got aware of the issue not too long ago because I didn't know there was a whole industry around it. So today we just had to speak to the right person, somebody who has considerable insight, and he will help us understand the issue so that particularly as Ghana heads to the poll Monday, God willing, people will be aware of the industry that they will be confronted with, and they'll be able to sift the true news from the fake news. So to help me understand the issues is a brother who has now become a boss. A brother who has become a boss and a very big man. I've known him for over a decade and he grows from grace to grace. He is the managing editor of GhanaFact, a very handsome young man. And to the ladies who will be joining us, he is married to my sister, so he's out of the market. His name is Rabiul Al Hassan. Rabiul, welcome.
Thank you. So you had to do all this mischief just to introduce me.
I just had to declare the access so that my sister will.
No problem. I would also do same as we engage throughout the session. So we'll see how it ends.
Oh, okay, thank you. So the topic for today is misinformation. Election 2020, misinformation, disinformation, and fake news. So Rabiu, as a manager of GhanaFact, what is GhanaFact about?
So GhanaFact is basically a project by Fact Space West Africa, which is an organization that has been set up to spread fact-checking across the West African sub-region. So in 2019 or through 2018 to 2019, I conducted some research trying to understand the ecosystem of misinformation on the continent, and particularly Ghana. And for my research, I understood that in 2016, we had a brush with some work around fact-checking during the 2016 elections. We had the Media Foundation for West Africa and also Pens Plus Byte launched some fact-checking programs in the country, trying to quell the spread of misinformation. They did that, I think, in partnership with Joy FM, which is a leading media organization in the country. So there was some bit of work done around fact-checking in Ghana in 2016, but since the elections ended, it looks like everything went quiet with regards to fact-checking. And so during my research, we decided to do a survey of 400 Ghanaians across the country to understand the space, the issues of misinformation and disinformation in Ghana. And more than 90% of the people we interviewed suggested there was the need for a full-time fact-checking organization in the country. 67%, I think, said they had encountered misinformation in one way or the other in the last 1 year. So we felt it was crucial that we launched a fact-checking platform to help tackle misinformation and disinformation. So that's what's been Fact Space West Africa and the GhanaFact project.
So you've been mentioning two keywords, misinformation, disinformation. Will you be able to help us understand, differentiate the two keywords that you've mentioned so that you'll be able to know the difference between misinformation and disinformation?
Okay. So misinformation basically is when you put out something that unintentionally is false. You don't deliberately set out to um, spread falsehood. Disinformation is when you deliberately, actively want to push out falsehood and falsities on the internet and also on traditional media. So basically, it's a very simple difference. One is very deliberate, the other is not.
So there's an element of you being deliberate. So
Yes.
assuming I chance on a news item that is suggesting that, say, Beyonce is contesting for president in 2024,
Mm-hmm,
it
mm-hmm,
might be false, but
mm-hmm,
I might be a fan of Beyonce, and because of, let's say, over excitement, I want to
mm-hmm,
push it across. It
mm-hmm.
is not my intention to deceive people.
Exactly.
On that leg, I am engaged in misinformation.
Misinformation. But the generators of that claim possibly might be pushing it out because they want clicks to their website and they want to possibly monetize that. So the generators become disinformers. They are trying to push out disinformation.
So on that one story, we will have misinformers and disinformers.
Exactly. Exactly.
So those who have generated it and want to cash in
Mm-hmm,
are the
mm-hmm.
disinformers. But
Exactly.
those who are just spreading it are
Mm-hmm,
misinformers. But
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
even if you know that the issue is false, and you also want to further, let's say, be a conveyor belt and further push the news to deceive more people, you have joined them to be disinformers instead of
Exactly.
misinformers.
Yes.
Great, 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 great. So why do people intentionally create, say,
Hmm.
false information and spread across?
It's a heavy question and it's very loaded. To break it down, one would have to understand the global world order actually, because on one level you can talk about people pushing out um, falsehood basically to monetize it and to make some money. On the other level, we are seeing state actors and some states actively push out misinformation, disinformation, fake news, basically to cement their place in the global world order. So you would hear from the US, they would be accusing Russia of actively sponsoring disinformation to affect the US elections and to kind of highlight the fault lines when it comes to the social fabric in the US. So for on one level, you can see they accusing the Russian state of being involved in this grand scheme to more or less trigger the fault lines in the US. So they accuse a whole state of pushing that. And the only motive that has been ascribed to it is Russia trying to be more dominant in the global world order. China as well has been accused, Iran as well has been accused on some levels for being involved in this. And it all has to do with the global world order and states trying to reinforce their dominance in the space.
Talking about global world order and people generating money out of this information, how big will you say is the industry of fake news?
You can't just imagine. Um, so on this again on multiple levels, where we have the fact-checking space, full-time fact checkers set up to deal with the spread of misinformation online and also on traditional media. It has only come about because we now have the internet. And on the internet, it seems to be a free space where people can go on there and push out whatever narrative without being checked. On one level, people have spoken about how it encourages free speech and entrenches democracy. But on another level, it creates a space for people to push out unverified information, which now we've seen to be able to undermine democracies and to be able to sway people's opinion to do one thing or the other. So that is one level, people trying to check it. On another level, we have people trying to monetize and make money from the various clicks that would come onto their platforms and the various advertisements that they would get when they get lots of views on various social media platforms. Then we have the social media companies who have made billions from creating the platform and getting people to engage. But beyond that, it is these platforms that are being leveraged and being used by disinformers to push out their various narratives and to basically undermine democracies. So on multiple levels, there are people involved and there is also money involved.
So talking about a lot of people being involved on multiple levels and talking about social media, talking about people trying to perpetuate or trying to exert some power on others. It means the industry might even be bigger, especially during elections.
Exactly.
So in periods of election, how will the citizens be able to sift false news from good news, news, factual news? Let me put it that way.
So it is important to state that fact checking is not just limited to periods of elections, but obviously, because of information explosion, mostly we witness leading to elections, there would be the need for more active, more effort to try to ensure integrity and to try to promote accuracy in discussions online. So election would be a special stage where there would be the need for more effort. But in our everyday lives, it is incumbent on everybody to take up this role of being critical, of verifying information before you believe it. But to answer your question directly, we are heading towards elections in some few days, in 2 days. We have produced more or less a 7-pointer for citizens to pay attention to in their efforts to spot misinformation, disinformation, or fake news. And one key thing we are alerting the public to is to read beyond the headlines. Mostly, people try to push out sensational stuff and invite people to click onto their URLs and get onto their platforms. And sometimes these are monetized. And they do this basically for their personal gain. Reading beyond the headline would help you get the context of whatever story is being pushed out there and would help you see whether a story is supposed to be taken seriously or not. That is one. Two, we encourage people to also be a bit critical and be aware of their personal biases. We like to operate in echo chambers, and so we are always seeking validation of our fears and whatever we believe in. So we are quite gullible to and susceptible to these things or things that basically validate whatever we think is true or false. So if you are a bit critical and aware of your personal biases, you're able to read between the lines. The third thing we encourage people to also do is on social media. The social media companies are taking up quite seriously the issue of the weaponization of misinformation on their platforms. So they are verifying people and they are able to kind of say that the person behind this social media account, we are aware of the person. So there is a blue tick that mostly is attached to that person's name. And they go through quite a stringent process to give you that blue tick. So if you see a platform pushing out whatever narrative and you are quite suspicious of it and the person is a public official, one thing you should pay attention to is the blue tick attached to the name. If there is a blue tick, then you know that the account has been verified. So you should take the account a bit seriously. Now, there's other bits of you also paying attention to the URL or paying attention to clone websites. We all know of the dominant media platforms in the country, and most of the dominant media platforms, even though they are traditional media platforms, also have online presence. So they mostly churn out information on radio and TV and reproduce same on their digital platforms. Now, there are some unscrupulous persons or persons trying to ride on the credibility of these media organizations and are going to get URLs that are quite similar or domains that are quite similar to the domains of the traditional media platforms that have digital presence. So it is quite confusing to maybe people who are not critical to be able to identify between the credible media platform domain and the clone website that is trying to ride on its popularity and credibility. So on all these levels, we are encouraging people to simply pay attention and not be deceived. There are others as well, and I think people can find them on our social media handles that have all been verified across the social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we also have an active WhatsApp tip line. If you're suspicious of any claim at all, or you're confused about anything, you can send it in. So we do the necessary verification if it fits our criteria.
I am interested in the pointers that you've given so far. Read beyond headlines, be critical, and be aware of your biases. Check verified accounts, be aware of clone websites. And I would just want us to go touch them one after the other. For the first one that you stated, read beyond headlines. There is a recent article I chanced on, and they are saying that it's a statistical job. And the statistics basically show that there was one account that on top of the account or the website, they said, okay, everything we have on this website is false. Yet you have a lot of people visiting the website. So even on that website, they have stated their position. Even in Ghana, we had one satiric website.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what satire is about.
Yeah.
They will
not everybody.
Well, you have an appreciable number of people aware of what satire is about. They are aware of the meaning of satire, but they read it, visit the website, and they make news out of a satiric website. Mm-hmm. So if people are itchy to hear fake news and people are itchy to kind of embrace fake stories, don't you think that just the headlines or whatever you are talking about wouldn't be enough for people who have itchy ears for such stories?
But if you have itching ears, the reason why we are telling you to read beyond the headlines. So if you're a satirical platform, and we have flagged some satire platforms in Ghana because they shared stories that were palpably untrue, but even though they flagged or they showed underneath the articles they published that they are a satirical website and so people shouldn't take them seriously, we had credible online platforms and bloggers reproduce the false stories they published without the tag that it came from a satirical platform. So it was being shared as true. The reason why we are saying that it could be possible that not everybody understands maybe how satirical platforms operate. But it is important that if you read beyond the headline and it is a satirical platform, you would see that the satirical platform has tagged the story as a satire. and has put there a disclaimer saying that don't believe whatever we produce on this platform. So if you don't read beyond the headline, you would not see that. You see where the problem is coming from.
Talking about you being critical, let's be a little bit practical. We are about 2 days away from elections. I am NDC, I am MPP. Let me use the NDC first. Now, you share a lot of information on various websites, and there's a huge data gathering that some of us are not even aware that these big tech companies have data on us, and they source this data and based on this data, they are able to see our preferences and customize adverts to suit our preferences. So maybe I've visited 1 or 2 websites, stated my preference one way or the other, without knowing that I have sold my preference to them. And out of that, they got to know that I am NDC or I am MPP. And they craft a story that is damaging to the opposition. I want my party to win. It's 2 days to election. What do I do?
So this question there be like it's a trick question. I don't know. So it's an interesting question, but let's try to break it down and connect it to happenings on the ground and connect it to things that have happened in the last few years. So the case study that you've just painted fits what we saw with Cambridge Analytica, which is a UK company that played key roles in the US elections in 2016. Now, Cambridge Analytica was able to mine people's data on Facebook, or they were able to chance on or get people's data on their activities on Facebook. And they were able to move beyond just getting that data, use algorithms or whatever technology available to be able to see people's preferences. They went beyond that and targeted people with misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, skewed to make people do one thing or the other. And we saw that they achieved their aim with the outcome of the 2016 election. From further investigations, we've heard of how some Black communities were actively targeted by Cambridge Analytica and the work they did during the elections to prevent them from going to the polls, and they achieved that, targeting them with misinformation and disinformation. So there is a blueprint, even though Cambridge Analytica has been disbanded. Would encourage people to go and watch The Great Hack, which is a documentary on this platform. It's just escaped me, but if I remember, I'll mention it. Just watch The Great Hack, and from the documentary, we understand they had some roles to even play in our 2016 elections. We simply don't know what they had to do in our elections in 2016, but it would be great going forward. Hopefully it unravels and we get to know. People should know that playing around on social media is not, you should look beyond just the face value of whatever you do on social media. There are things happening behind the scenes, and you should pay attention to these things and try and expose yourself to it. And connecting it to the issue of being critical and being aware of your personal biases. It would help in a great deal if people are really aware of their biases and know that you can be gullible if you decide not to be critical. Anything you chance on, if you think it makes you happy because it validates your fears and your beliefs, then you are in big trouble, because people will take advantage of you in this information age.
Thank you very much. Now to the clone websites. What you said to some, they might have understanding of what you said, but to some, they might not. So if you say a clone website, can you give examples of, you can just create something from your own head without mentioning existing examples. But
let me
if you
mention
are to
one existing example. So we are a fact-checking organization that is signatory to the International Fact-Checking Network, which basically provides the framework for full-time fact-checkers around the world to operate their code of principles, which is a global quality media standard. We have, in the last few months, seen another supposed fact-checking organization trying to write on our name. So you can find us www.ghanafact.com and go and read our fact-check reports and our work. But this relatively new fact-checking organization that was only set up sometime, I think, in July, has a domain name that is quite similar to our domain name. You simply have to add check to it.
So instead of your GhanaFact.com, the person has created GhanaFactCheck.com.
Exactly.
So if you are already aware of Ghana Fact, once you see the Ghana Fact, you might not even read on to see the check.
Exactly.
And you will see that, oh, because this story has been fact-checked by Ghana
and sometimes
Fact.
sometimes not just limited to the example that has been given, but beyond that. For the example that has been given, we've done some research. So there is a tool that you can use to see who is behind whichever website, called Who Is. And we managed to use that tool to see when it was set up, even though we were not able to see who really was behind it in terms of the name. But we are still doing some more digging. But beyond just the domain name, there are other clone websites that try to basically mirror the original website, the front end. So the front end would look exactly like the original credible media organization. So that's when they've even taken it to another level. Beyond that, they also kind of plagiarize the stories from the original website. That's also on another level altogether. So that's the explanation I can give to that. So people should just they should simply pay attention and not take things on the face value.
So people should just pay attention as you will be visiting websites or be chancing on stories on social media. Be aware that your mind joy online can be anything else. Somebody can just add S to mind joy online to be mind joy online. So you see the mind joy and you just take it out from there. So just be careful. Be sure that whatever story you are reading is coming from a credible website. Now you were talking about people doing things, and it's also pointing out to a fact that there might be a regulatory lapse. Is there anything to regulate the industry so that people will be aware that at least once this is coming from this place, I know everything is conk?
So in the last few years, we've seen a number of states put in place laws to regulate the issues of fact-checking, misinformation and disinformation and fake news. For us as journalists and as fact-checkers, we are always very careful when it comes to states that put together or institute laws to regulate this space, because we've seen how politicians are able to exploit these laws and go after journalists and go after political dissidents. So we are a bit careful, but it is crucial that at least when laws are going to be passed to regulate the space. Stakeholders are engaged, and journalists are brought to the table, fact checkers are brought to the table, industry experts are engaged. There's a wide consultation to ensure that any law is not passed to basically undermine free speech and undermine democracies. That would be the first point. But beyond that, in Ghana, we have the Electronic Communications Act, which we've seen being touted or being mentioned by the police and being used to prosecute one or two people. When we started recording cases of COVID-19, there were lots of claims being pushed out there about what causes COVID-19. A gentleman joined the bandwagon of prescribing lots of very funny things to be the reasons why people are catching COVID-19. And he suggested that 5G was the cause of COVID-19. And in Ghana, we're kind of installing that. So he was apprehended by the police. And in the engagements or the statements that came from the police, they said they were going to be using the Electronic Communications Act, some provision in there to prosecute him. So in Ghana, at least, we know of the Electronic Communications Act. Quite recently, the arrest of the editor of an online platform called WhatsApp. Also, we heard the security agencies or the prosecution say, or the prosecutors say they were going to be using the criminal code to prosecute him. Some provisions in there. So these are the two that I know of, particularly in Ghana. And in Africa, increasingly, we are seeing some governments kind of institute laws and pass laws to regulate the space. But we are worried that politicians would exploit it to attack journalists and also people who don't precinct them in their countries.
So let's cite an example and see. You see all these institutions, the big techs, what they want is money. And you also attest to the fact that fake news have huge traction. People visit their websites, and the more they collect, the more they get the money. And the big tech also benefit one way or the other. So what will be the motivation for the big tech companies like, say, Google, to help us reduce the proliferation of fake news?
So we know from 2016 and from happening since that the tech companies are now being held to account for happenings on their platform. And quite recently, I think Congress had in the CEOs of Facebook and I think Twitter or Google, basically to answer to Congress efforts they put in place to deal with misinformation and disinformation on their platforms leading to the US elections. We have seen in the UK also some work from their parliament to rein in and also call the leadership of these tech companies to order, the internet companies. And they've passed some laws to regulate the space. Lots of things have changed since 2016. So the tech companies are being held to account. Why African governments are not also doing the same, we all know the answer. But we just hope that with the efforts being put in by the US Congress and also the Europeans, maybe it would apply to Africa because it would become a globally accepted norm when they pass these laws to regulate the space. And then we see the social media companies adopt same. So for Google, they are tagging systems that they use, leveraging on the fact check reports that we publish to be able to reduce the feed and the popularity of some of these misinformation, disinformation on their platforms. So there is some effort being put in, but as to whether it meets the volume of misinformation we are seeing on their platform, that is another discussion altogether. With Facebook, they have the third-party fact-checking program where they engage fact checkers, full-time fact checkers, to do some work on their platforms, helping flag misinformation. Some of the other tech companies are also expected to roll out similar projects. At the height of COVID-19, we had the IFCN bring together more than 100 fact checkers across the world to help tackle misinformation around COVID-19 under the IFCN COVID-19 Alliance. GhanaFact was part of that. The Alliance managed to publish in excess of 5,000 reports, and we had some of the known tech companies support this project to ensure that they didn't allow some of the debunked misinformation, disinformation, and fake news to go viral on their platforms. So these and more are some of the things being done to flag misinformation on these platforms. But as to whether they meet again the volume of misinformation and is being effective to the levels that we would expect is another thing altogether.
You talked about being the IFCN and collaborating with them so that you'll be able to fact check stories, especially from Ghana with regards to COVID-19. We are moving into election 2020. What are some of the strategic partnerships you are part of to at least sanitize the system with regards to reducing fake news?
Sure. So we've currently partnered with the largest election observer group in the country, CODEO. We are also partnering with the West African Network for Peace Building. We have been co-opted into the National Elections Response Group. We'll be in the Situation Room of WANEP. So we'll be leveraging on the more than 4,000 election observers for CODEO and also the election observers of WANEP. As well, we'll be collaborating with the EU Observer Group. We are hoping to do some work with the internet companies as well. And we are also going to streamline our efforts by some collaboration with other fact-checking organizations also in Ghana. So we have firmed all these up to streamline our operations and be more effective and targeted with the work that we do.
Now we've been talking about fake news, but we know the opposite of falsity is truth. And the most contentious issue sometimes is defining what truth is. How will I be able to know the truth?
This is always an interesting issue. So let me lay out the way we operate as fact checkers. So for GhanaFact, we are signatory to the IFCN. The IFCN has code of principles. So as part of the code of principles, we are supposed to lay out the methodology we use in producing our fact check reports. And even though we would have two different fact check reports, the methodology we use, we ensure that it's more or less a template. And if you follow that template, whilst we produce the fact check report and give out our verdict, anybody at all who uses that same methodology template, if you go through that template, you should also be able to arrive at the same conclusion with any of our reports. So that is the way we operate as fact checkers. Beyond that, we operate with publicly available sources. So we try as much as possible to make the reader have the chance to also independently verify for himself from the source documents we are using to either confirm or debunk whatever information. So we basically allow you to be the person who fact checks the fact checker, which is something mostly that comes up. That who fact checks the fact checker? You do, because the source documents we use in producing our fact checks are all available in the report for you to also independently verify. I don't know if I've tried answering the
Yeah,
question.
you've done your best. But I think the issue that we also have to look at is in Ghana, a lot of people have affinity to one or two radio stations, and they believe that this coming from station A or station B is conk because a station perhaps might have built a credibility over the years. But if you want to be honest, you see that some of our media people themselves might be one way or the other. I don't know what to say. Like, I just don't know the mild adjective to use. But you see that sometimes they talk about issues that they are not privy, like they don't have the facts to support whatever thing they have said. And they just channel it through their medium. And there are people to who consume them and they believe that since it is coming from the radio station, it is the truth. Oh, Meteor Station A, Meteor Station B. In this era of election, how will we be able to know, say, this thing coming from radio station A? Because sometimes they might even have agenda that we outside the radio station might not be aware of. Because every corporate institution might have a spirit or philosophy that sometimes the outside world we might not know. So how will
As
we
for where you are going,
what advice will you give to journalists in this election season? It might be a story, but as you are churning out, how will you also put your listeners in mind so that as you churn out the story, you don't carry your listeners along in your confusion?
it's a simple verify, verify, verify. That's it. And it's only ethical that before you put out any information, you verify. It is not so much about getting it first, it's about getting it right. So that would be the simple answer for the question you've asked.
It's not about getting it first, but getting it right. That's very powerful. Verify, don't rush, get it right, and let everybody move on peacefully. Do you have anything that you want to add?
So the only thing I would want to add is to encourage people to just be critical, be aware of their personal biases. Don't operate in an echo chamber where you are seeking validation for your fears and beliefs. And if you chance on any suspicious information, anything you are confused about, we are a fact-checking organization and we have a tip line, an active tip line. You can visit our platform with a simple click of the WhatsApp number. You can connect to us in that verified tip line by WhatsApp. So you can share with us whatever confusion and whatever you're suspicious about. And if it fits our criteria basically is we are looking for claims that have gone viral, claims that can be linked to an identifiable person, a public official, claims that if we don't verify could possibly have a negative impact on the public. So if it fits our criteria, we would produce a fact check report and try to promote accuracy in discourses online and also on traditional media.
Can you
So
give
you
us
can
the
visit.
website? Can you give us the WhatsApp number so that if anybody has issue,
Okay.
the person will just...
I think it's 0244 444
0244 444
Yeah, 491. Is it correct?
491.
Yes.
So 0264.
Uh-huh.
91.
Yes, 0244499971. So
You've
3 4s,
confused.
3 9s, 7 1.
Okay. Thank you. So it's been interesting having you. I've been educated. We all know that sometimes because of our backgrounds, a lot of us might not be inquisitorial. So if we just want to accept anything in an era of fake news, we will be gone before we realize we are dead. So just let's ask simple questions. When, what, how, why? If you forget all these things, any news that you hear, you can just ask yourself why. If you ask why 3 times and you're able to get a logical answer, you might form opinion about it. Oh, Kofi has gone to school. Why? Oh, maybe he wants to study. He went to school because he wants to be a big man. Why?
Who is even behind the information?
Yeah.
Who is it? Who
So
is the
if
publisher?
you just
Is the
probe
person
and you
credible?
ask 3 whys and you get a sensible answer, you might form an opinion, but just don't swallow anything that you see online, because Google, YouTube has everything.
Yeah.
And it's not everything you see on Google that is right. And it's not
Exactly.
everything that you see on Facebook, on any social media platform that is right. Please be aware of your biases, especially between today to Tuesday. Be aware of your biases and be critical. Thank you so much, Rabiu, for your time. And I wish you and the team at GhanaFact the best. I know you've been having sleepless nights, but you have just 3 days to go. So you just keep.
But since you've thanked me for joining you, can you explain to us what inspired your new hairstyle?
On that note, we will say a very good evening to everybody, and we will see you sometime. Vote wisely, and the wise thing that you have to do is, depending on your circumstance, you vote according to that. Have a good night. Bye.
So you not answer my question.